Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I am pleased to present Sarah Mitchell, our Director of Customer Success. Today, Sarah is going to be wrapping up, so this is part 2 actually, of her session on doing a client-side build, CLI building for Android apps. In other words, how to take an application that you've built in Alpha Anywhere and package it up so that it can be deployed and run as a native application on an Android device. But again, we're also here for questions. You could type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So I believe we are ready to get started. We just check in here with Sarah. Hello, Sarah. Are you there?
I am here. I need just 1 or 2 more minutes. I apologize. I had to reboot right before we started.
Exactly. I was okay. I need to buy you a little bit more time.
I hit some sort of system error that crashed a bunch of stuff, and I just needed to reboot. I reboot my system once a week, so this is to be expected.
That's fair.
But I'm just getting one more thing set up here before we start.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we have a new video that plays on our website. We're very excited about it. Although
That's cool. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I bet it's coming through pretty choppy on your screen there, but
you'd be surprised.
Yeah. All right then. Let's see. So again, we can actually start with questions too. If anyone has got anything, type it into the GoToWebinar control panel. Oh, good. And it does look like the video is coming through pretty clear. Yeah, this technology gets better and better. Well, this is an interesting question. This one has to do with adding video players onto a view box. And I want to be able to set the video ID dynamically. So.
All right. We're set up.
Take a look at that. Oh, excellent. And you're there. Great.
I am here. Yeah.
So let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
All right.
See a dialog box.
I do see it. I see it. Show my screen.
And there's your screen with all kinds of fun formulas.
That seem a bit cleaner.
Looks good. Alpha Anywhere Q&A.
Yes. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Welcome. We're doing part 2 of Cordova CLI building Android applications using the Cordova CLI command line interface builder. Today, I do believe there will be parts 3 and 4 following this, as there are some very specific things I want to get into. There's some new exciting changes that happened last week that I want to tell people about as well. Let's see here. Go to the next. There we go. As always, just a reminder, DevCon 2022, October 18th to the 21st. If you have never been or have gone in the past and haven't got your ticket yet, highly encourage you to consider attending this year. We're going to be covering lots of great things: mobile development, web development, web services, the whole everything. I'm hoping you can be there. Again, register at www.alphasoftware.com/devcon2022. I hope you guys can join us. Tickets are the cheapest they're going to be for the remainder of the year now, so get in there and get them. And yes, again, continuing the discussion on Cordova CLI, building Android apps with Cordova. And then just to recap briefly what Cordova CLI is. CLI stands for Command Line Interface, and it's a terminal application you run, and you run commands on the command line. And the Cordova CLI piece is just for building mobile applications using the Apache Cordova framework, which is a wrapper around the native languages used for iOS or Android operating systems. And Apache Cordova lets you do is use things like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to develop your app, and then it does the work of translating that into the native language to communicate with the target operating system that you're going to be deploying to. The nice thing about that is you design your app once and you can deploy it to both platforms. So you don't have to create an app in Xcode and an app in Android Studio. It's separate code bases. You can just have one, and it handles all of that work for you. And just to reiterate, this is what Apache Cordova is. A Cordova application is this big orange box at the top. It has a web app in it, which is the HTML, JavaScript, CSS piece that you build. It has Cordova plugins, which you can reference using JavaScript, and all of that runs through some sort of rendering engine, which then that communicates with the operating system, as do the plugins. And in terms of where Alpha Anywhere sits in all of this, we are that web app piece. You use Alpha Anywhere to develop the UI with the UX component, adding in controls, JavaScript, anything else you'd like to customize. And then that works with a web view engine that we've chosen to integrate and use, the WK Web View. And we've also included a variety of Cordova plugins right in Alpha Anywhere that you can utilize to access stuff like the geolocation information, the location of the device, access the camera, store things on the file, and so on and so forth. With respect to building Android applications, and I don't think I did a very good job about explaining this before, but to build an Android app, you have to be running Android. You have to use Android Studio, and Android Studio is a Windows. It's a Windows tool, and the Cordova piece works with. It has that framework. The builder itself, it works with both Android Studio and all these other tools that you see on the screen to generate the APK application file for Android that you could then install in a debug mode and test out either an emulator or on a device. So everything above this Cordova line is the stuff that Cordova needs. So Gradle uses Java Development Kit. 8.0 is the one we recommend you install. However, 11 is coming into the picture here in the future soon. Maybe with the next release, we'll see. So Gradle uses JDK. Gradle is a build tool. It executes all the scripts needed by Cordova to do all the translation into the application files for your Android app. Git and Node.js are used to retrieve the plugins wherever they're stored. Cordova plugins can live in two places. They can live up in GitHub. They can also live on NPM. And all of that stuff is used by Cordova. And then Android Studio it's where we bring in the emulators to test, but it's also how you get all the development kits installed for API level 30 and above. So that's the tool you use to download the additional things needed by Cordova to build the application. And the reason we didn't talk about this last week is because this wasn't ready, but next release of Alpha Anywhere, which is coming soon, we have updated the Cordova Builder to work with Cordova CLI 11. So previously, we told you install 10 using a very specific npm install-g Cordova at 10 because 11 support hadn't been added yet. But the team's been working hard over the last 2 weeks to get that in. So that's now available. And the thing about Cordova CLI 11 is that this is the thing that supports API level 30, which is required for Google Play submission on all new apps. If you had previously installed Cordova 10 or older, upgrading is really easy. You run 2 commands on the command line using npm uninstall-g Cordova will uninstall it globally off of your system. And then that second command will install Cordova 11, which includes everything needed to build for Android API 30. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about how you upgrade, because I know some of you already have a system in place. And in addition to upgrading Cordova, maybe you need to update your other tools like Gradle, or at some point we're going to possibly require using Java Development Kit 11 instead of 8. So that's going to change, where the Java home location might be specified. And just as just to point out, how you can go in and things to be aware of when you do update these tools. When you initially set up your system to work with an Android CLI build, you have to configure some system variables and update the system path. And these variables are contain information that any application that is running on the computer has access to. So when the application launches, it has an environment, and these variables are in that environment. So if you do something like update Gradle, which is the example I wanted to point out today, because I've had Gradle 6.3 on my system forever, and it's not supported. It hasn't been supported in a while. So I needed to change that. I just wanted to show you guys real quick what you need to do if you do that. So if you've not updated system variables before, you can search for system, I think it's system variables in Windows. Windows 10 is going to look different. This is Windows 11. But where what you need to find is that edit the system environment variables. And that's something you can find in the control panel. It's also available if you have the Explorer window open. You can right click on this PC and say properties. And in terms of Windows 11, if you come down here, there's some advanced system settings. And hopefully you guys can't hear that. That opens up this dialog as well. So the reason you didn't see anything pop up is because this is what gets opened. But in here in system properties on advanced, there's something called environment variables. So if you've forgotten how you configured your variables before, this is where they're at. And the system variables are all defined here in this lower box. So we have the Android SDK root. This is largely going to be unchanged. Java Home, this is where JDK 8.0 was installed. If at some point in the future you upgrade to a different version, we support a new version, then this variable will need to be updated to use whatever that new installation location is. And then the third one is path. And path is quite large. So if you select path and click edit, it's got a whole bunch of stuff in it. And the stuff that we ask you to add are Gradle, the bin file location for your Java installation, and the SDK root platform tools. And at some point, any of these things could change in the future. So knowing that how to come in here and find it and change it is good to know. Earlier today, I installed Gradle 7.4.1, but this still said Gradle 6.3. And to edit this, all you need to do is select it, click edit, and it will make it editable. You have to type into this, unless you can browse. Well, you can browse for a folder here too. So I knew that I had put Gradle in this directory, and so I came in here and I updated it to use that new location. But that's all I had to do to update those. So that's how you go in and update environment variables if they've changed. Let me cancel out of here. And the same thing goes for Android SDK root. If at some point Android Studio changes where that lives, that would need to be updated. And we try our best to make sure to notify you guys when that happens and what you need to do. Let me see here. So that's that's the Cordova. Today we're going to look at building an app, figuring out what your Ajax callback URL is, and then also walk you through testing that in using live test, what you need to do in the server settings to make sure that works, as well as how to put a device into debug mode so you could actually plug in a physical device into your system and then install and test on that. So to recap, this applies to both iOS and Android mobile apps. There's something called a cookie SameSite value or cookie SameSite mode in Alpha Anywhere. And the way Ajax callbacks work, if you need to use the server to do any kind of server-side processing, is we create sessions, and some of that relies on having cookies available. We do not support cookieless sessions anymore and haven't for years. But in order for your application to even talk to the server, you need to have a cookie policy that lets that happen. So by default, both Alpha Cloud IIS, so Alpha Cloud runs IIS under the hood, but by default, that defaults to strict, as does the classic server's SameSite mode found on the advanced tab. You need to set the cookie SameSite value to unset in order for your application to communicate with the server. If you don't do that, your callbacks will fail. It won't be able to load things, and it won't work basically. So we're going to look at this one today in the development server, how you can tweak that to work with live test in your testing environment. And we're also going to take a peek at how to get your Ajax callback URL. You have to know what that is to make callbacks from the app. When your app runs on a device, it's on the device. The website that it's on is your mobile device. So it doesn't know about the application server. So you need to define that if your app makes callbacks. If your app doesn't make callbacks, it's not important. But I think most people on this call are probably using databases, and those live up on the server. We're going to, again, look at creating a Cordova project because of these new changes that are coming out to support Cordova CLI 11. We strongly encourage you to create a new project and reconfigure all your required plugins for that. You can work with an older project, but what tends to happen is that the plugins that were downloaded for that project won't automatically update to catch newer versions if that is required. So the easiest way to handle updating to a new version of Alpha Anywhere with your Cordova project is to make a new one and set that all up again and build it. We try really hard to port things forward, but it's difficult to know just from looking at the settings if a plugin is something that we set or it was something you set. And rather than run over what you've done, if you've added any customizations, we err on the side of not changing it and have you make a new one. So this is what we'll cover today, and we're going to get right into the live demo. Excuse me. So I've done a little bit of work since our last webinar, and I've created this new component called Ajax Callback. And all this component does is make a callback to the application server to get a little bit of JavaScript that displays an alert that says callback succeeded. And the way this was done was by adding a button, which you can do through add control and then search for a button, or you can come down here to other controls and select button. We gave it a name. A button text says do callback. On this one, I've given it the sub-theme of primary. If you're not available, or not available, if you're not familiar with sub-themes, the Alpha Anywhere web themes, so Alpha or Alpha Gray, have variations for some controls, which we call sub-themes. And primary is this one. It's got a background color on it. By default, your buttons will look like this if you don't select a sub-theme for your buttons. But we have primary. There's a whole bunch in here for other things, capsule, circle, and so on and so forth. So I did that. And then I added a click event. And this click event is a little bit different than from what you've probably seen. And I do believe we attempted to use this the other day, but I had JavaScript errors. Or not JavaScript errors, I had XBasic errors and it didn't work. But initially when you set up a click event, you're going to be on the Action JavaScript script tab. Hold on. I'm going to quickly cancel out of here real quick. No, do not save changes. Let's go look at the down event. So initially when you go in to edit a click event or really any of these JavaScript touch mouse pointer events, you're going to be in the Action JavaScript tab. But there are two other modes that you can use to initiate some sort of workflow or action when the user interacts with the control. And one of them is text mode, which is JavaScript. So you could add custom JavaScript code here to do a calculation or print a message on the screen. But we also have XBasic, server-side XBasic, which this is just a generated XBasic function that you can put some XBasic code in that is run. This is the same as making an Ajax callback. The major difference is that the code for this is going to only be found here in this interface where you edit the event. And the function name has been created for you. So this is just a simple test. I could go the route of making an XBasic function and put it over in the XBasic functions section and create an Ajax callback action, JavaScript action, and set that all up. But all I really need to do is just return some code to display an alert to validate that I have not only do I have my callback URL correct, but that it's working and I'm getting data back. So what this does here is I've got this dim.js C equals alert callback succeeded, and this is just a JavaScript alert. And then I take that JS, which contains my JavaScript, and I return it here. So this is a way of returning code from a function in XBasic. You can take the function name and set it equal to the content you want to return. We also support using the return keyword. You will see both examples in our documentation. And in the case of the server-side XBasic mode of programming your click event, this is what you'll be presented with, is that equal syntax. So if we test this here, it will do a full preview and live preview. We'll click the button, and what we should see is an alert pop up on the screen. This is callback succeeded. So that's our alert. It worked. Fantastic. Now that we've verified this works, next we want to do is save a page and publish this to the application server. Now, if you're using Community Edition, the only place you can publish your applications is to Alpha Cloud. And if you haven't gotten there yet, you really can't publish anywhere. But you can use Live Test, which is back here on the Web Projects control panel. And what Live Test lets you do is utilize the development server to run your application locally in a browser, the whole thing, and test it. So if we click Live Test here, it's going to pop up this screen, ask me, what do I want to run? Now I've got two A5W pages, which are Alpha Anywhere's web page format that supports preprocessing XBasic, because that's what we use on the server for all of our component stuff. But there's two in here. There's Hello, which we created last time. And there's this new one called Callback, which just contains the component we were looking at. That's all that's on it. And then there's also these three other files. You can ignore these. They're in the PhoneGap projects directory. They're just HTML pages that were generated as part of the PhoneGap or the Cordova build process. Those are just files that are used in your application when you run it on mobile. So you're never really going to run those. But we'll take a look at Callback. And we're going to clear out the Live Test folder just to make sure there's nothing else in there when we publish this. I'm going to click OK. I'll let that run. And what this does is it runs the component, runs that page. Here's our callback A5W. And this is my callback button. And I click it, I get my callback succeeded message. So why did I do this? Well, I want to use the Live Test server to test my callbacks for my mobile app locally before I decide I want to commit to publishing up to Alpha Cloud. So we'll put this on pause for a moment and let's go look at the Cordova Builder. I'm going to make a new project. Call it Ajax Callback Demo. So this is the Cordova Builder. This is the builder as of build 8095, which is a nightly build, and there's another one that's available that I saw when I was launching. But this one is has some of the new stuff in it for supporting Cordova CLI 11. So when you set up a Cordova project for a CLI build, your app build target is going to be set to CLI. There are two ways you can build applications for mobile with Alpha Anywhere. One is using the Cordova CLI command line interface build method, and the other one is using Ionic AppFlow. We did a presentation previously on Ionic AppFlow. That one covered, we talked about iOS, but we can certainly cover Android if that's something that people want to see. But for today, we're going to talk about just building locally on your system. So you select CLI, you pick the platforms you want to target. So we're going to target Android. We're going to use our Ajax callback as our initial component. And now we need to specify our URL for Ajax callbacks, because what this component does is it sends a message to the server, runs a function, and asks for some JavaScript back. So the way to determine this, if you're using live test, and also if you're using Alpha Cloud, is the fastest way is to publish an A5W page up to your server, which is what live test does. This is published an A5W page to the development server. So we can actually use this URL here as our callback URL. And the piece that's the callback URL is this part at the beginning. However, this piece here that says Sarah 2019, I need to replace that with my system's IP address. So we'll come in here, let's open this up. And this dialog has a ton of information in it, hidden behind all these links. But you can reference your system, your computer, as the location to make that callback. And this little link here that says show IP addresses for my machine will actually list your IP address for you. So we're gonna take this number here, and I'm gonna click on it and click OK, and that's gonna insert it into the URL dialog for me. I'm gonna tell it it's an http://URL, and then I'm gonna come over here, and I'm gonna take everything from the colon up to that slash before the callback A5W page, and then copy that and paste it after my IP address and click OK. So that's going to be my callback URL for using the live test. Now, be aware that your IP address changes. If you go and log on to another Wi-Fi network, your IP address is going to change. The 192.168.1 is a local IP address to whatever your local network that you're on is. So we set this up to use the live test folder. And now we're going to configure this to work with the new Cordova 11 specification. So if you're using Cordova CLI 11, you need to come down here and check this box that says using Cordova Android 10.1.1 or later. Oh, we don't know what version you've installed or what version you're going to use. So you'll want to check that. And you're also going to want to check Android Insecure File Mode enabled. This is because of how we store files and how we access them from within the application. This needs to be turned on if you're going to store data on the file system, if you have Action JavaScript, so on and so forth. So this is required. These other two things, host scheme, host name preference, these have been added, but they're not necessarily used just yet. We have plans for them, but that's still in the works right now. But we'll definitely update you on what that is. And then as for the rest of this, I'm just going to let Alpha Anywhere fill it in. I'm going to click Save, wait for it to generate some stuff. Let it create my project. And then I'm going to return to the Cordova Builder. So at this point, when we scroll down, we should see some plugins have been checked. So device has been checked, network information, splash screen, so we can display a splash screen while the app is loading. I believe that's everything. I do want to give a shout out to whitelist. You can't use this anymore. We are debating removing it completely from this builder. It's not supported on Android 11. And I don't believe that you can use it in iOS anymore. So if you've got plugins that require that, you're going to need to find some sort of alternative to replace them, because you can't use that with the Android CLI 11. I'm going to keep all the rest of the defaults in here. Target SDK version. Oh, I'm not going to keep. I'm going to change this stuff here. So in addition to all that other stuff, you're going to want to specify your application ID. There's going to be a default value in here, com your company.your app. You'll just want to change that to be whatever. So if you have a domain where this app's going to be hosted, you could use that. I'm just going to put just a I don't know, fake app ID in here, I guess. Let's do Ajax demo live. And this piece of text here is used in the file generation for the folder structure when we get to the next step. We'll call this one Ajax Callback Live Demo. All right. All right, so testing the callback URL. Leave everything else blank because we're just going to do a debug build. But at this point, I believe I am ready to go and build an Android app and run it in an emulator. So I'm going to click Save and Launch for Cordova Build this time. And we're going to get this screen. Now I haven't done anything here. This remembered my old folder. I'm going to change that. Let's make a new folder. Ooh, no. Got to be up here. Ajax Callback Demo. All right. Click OK. So the target build folder is where all of my files are going to be stored. The build script, all the files required to build the APK, as well as the output of that build result. I'm building an Android application, so I need to generate an Android build. If I was doing an iOS build, I would check iOS build script. I'm going to uncheck existing app. For those of you that don't know what this is, existing app is an option you can enable if you are rebuilding your application because you've changed your UX component. But if you haven't changed your plugins, you can check update existing app, and all that will do is just update the HTML, CSS resources without touching anything else. If you have this checked and you've added plugins, there's a new option to update all plugins. In older builds of Alpha Anywhere, if that was checked and you just updated plugins, it would seemingly look like nothing happened because the plugins don't get updated in that case. So be aware of that's how that works. I'm going to turn that off because we're building our app for the first time. We're going to build a debug build. And I would like to install this on a device or emulator. So if we come over here to Android Studio, some of you may remember that we set up some virtual devices, some fake Android devices here using Android Studio. And this was done using Device Manager, which is actually open here. I recently updated to Bumblebee and changed my color scheme because I heard that this might be easier to see. But we had two little emulators in here that we could run. We had one that emulated a Pixel 4 with API level 30, and we had one that was a Pixel 5 with API level 30. So I'm going to leave these off right now because I wanted to show you the physical device setup, and the way I've got the physical device set up right now is see if I can get it right here. I've got an app running that's basically sharing my mobile device screen here. So like if I swipe up, you can see I've got some stuff installed in here and stuff like that. In fact, let's take this one off here. Uninstall. And let's uninstall that guy too. So in order to debug onto a device, there's a setup you have to go through first, and it's in your settings. And if you scroll down in your settings and you find about this tablet, and I think on this one it was software information. You see this thing right here, build number. If you tap that 7 times, it will ask you if you would like to turn on debug mode, which is what you have to do in order to be able to plug in your device via USB cable into your computer and then install apps onto it to test.
Well, that seems rather intuitive, right? Just
yeah, totally intuitive. So once you've tapped that 7 times, which you can Google this, there's a ton of information on it. What that adds is there's a developer options thing that then becomes available, and you have to come in here and you have to turn on USB debugging, which, as you can see, it is now gone because I tapped it, and I don't know if I can get it back. Let's see here. There we go. There we go. So that's got to be on. And then once that's on, you're ready to go. So I'll leave this up. Let's see here. I'm gonna click Build App. I'm gonna check this option. So install on a device or emulator. My device is connected, so we'll use that. I'll click Build. And we'll bring this guy back over here so you can watch this go. And this might take a moment. So while that's running, actually, I have to wait for it to finish. I forgot to tell you to do one more thing, and I've already done it, but we'll go take a look at it anyway after this finishes, because the build locks up alpha anywhere. But the other piece that you need to do is you need to go into the development server settings and change the SameSite mode to Unset, which should be doable now in the current nightly build of Community Edition. That's actually a setting you can't change on build 8000 on the current release that's out there. But in the next release, you should be able to do that. And while this is running, if you run a build using the Cordova CLI builder with Alpha Anywhere and the screen pops up and you get a bunch of error messages, if you could send us your whole log, like if you just don't know what's going on, you can send us your log and I'll show you guys how you could run this on the command line so the window doesn't disappear on you. But if you send us that log into guides@alphasoftware.com, we are more than happy to help you identify the errors. This is something that we're trying to ramp up on and support and get a better understanding on for you. Excuse me. Have any questions on the setup so far, or?
Nope, not so far in the setup. Definitely someone is expressing interest on seeing iOS stuff at some point as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah. That's a bit difficult to do when you only have a Windows computer, but we'll look into the iOS for sure. Definitely on the, if you didn't watch our Ionic App Flow webinar, we did iOS builds with that. Ionic App Flow is great if you don't have a Mac because they do all the building for you, so you don't actually need it. There we go, our build's done. It's installing our app. But before we click that button, we're gonna come back over here. We're gonna come over to web. So this is the web products control panel in Alpha Anywhere. If you come over to web and down to development server, this opens up the development server settings. And in here is where you can configure some things for the development server, which is used to run live test, and it's used to run live preview. And the development server is just a local application server version that you can use to test on. If you come in here and you go over to advanced and go down, there's a setting here. It's going to say SameSite mode. It will be set to strict initially. And you'll want to come in here and just set that to unset, save your changes, and then restart the server. If you don't restart the server, it doesn't grab the new changes. And that can take a minute. But we can verify if that's still up and running by coming over here and clicking our button. And if we get our callback succeeded, there we go. So that worked. Our server's up and running now. And we come over to this guy, which is on the same Wi-Fi network as my machine, which is a requirement for this to work. When we tap go do callback, there's our callback. It succeeded. That's fantastic. If it didn't succeed, one way you can figure out why it failed is to come into Android Studio and attach the debugger to the application. So we're going to look at how you do that right now. Here this is Android Studio. I've got an application open. This is not the app that's currently installed on my device. It's not the one we built, but this does give me access to the device manager and the build tools and the SDK manager stuff, so I can go and install additional emulators or packages as needed. But one of these buttons up here, if you look at it, and I think it might be under run as well. It's called attached to process, and it looks like a little green bug with an arrow. And if you click on that, you get this pop-up, and it asks you, what do you want to debug? So my device is attached. It's this Samsung SMT220 running Android 11 API 30. If I was running one of these guys, it would show that instead, though I believe the debugger launches automatically with these guys. But it's going to list all the apps you have available to debug, and the Ajax demo live is the one that we just created. So I'm going to click OK, and this opens up the debugger. So down here, there's something called logcat, and if it's going to do this when you first get there, because it doesn't say, there's no debuggable process selected. So we come here and we pick live demo. This is now attached to that app that's running. And if an error happens, so when I was testing earlier, I was not successful with my Ajax callback. I had forgotten to change the SameSite mode to unset, and I was getting an error in here that said, there it goes, course policy blocking something, SameSite origin not allowed, which clued me into the fact that I hadn't configured that. So this can be a little bit difficult to parse, but it's worth trying to figure it out. There's a profiler here. If you wanted to profile your application to figure out where things are slow, you can inspect things within your app. So Ajax live demo here. Oh, it may not want to do that because I don't have the project loaded. Oh no, it's just slow. So I've got a network inspector. I've got a database inspector. If there was a database in here, I could look at background tasks that are working. There's some problems in here. If there's some errors found in the IDE, then it's gonna show that to you. There's also these debugging to do. I am still learning this, but for today, like having this logcat open and seeing that error pop up when I tapped that button was insanely helpful to tracking down what I was doing wrong. So I strongly encourage you folks to look into this and figure out how to use this debugging tool, because it's going to save you time and really empower you to develop apps. There's no other way that I know of to debug things. Again, we can help you and support if you're building your app and it's failing and you just don't understand, and we'll try our best to educate you. But in terms of, figuring out what's going wrong within your app, learning this is going to really save you a lot of time. So I'm going to turn off this screen share on this app, and I'm going to go ahead and I think I can stop debugging. Click the stop button. It's not doing that anymore. And we're going to launch this Pixel 4 API 30 device, unless I get another your hard drive is out of space error, in which case we're not going to be able to demo that. I think that's running now. There we go. There's our app, and I'm going to come in here, swipe up, and app info. I'm going to remove this real quick just to make sure that it doesn't conflict with the app that we have. Click OK. Uninstall that. It's gone now. I don't have any apps in here that I've installed. Click the home button, and we're going to come back here and close this and come back through our Cordova Builder and save and launch again. We're going to install on the device or emulator this time. I could check update existing app to speed things up because I didn't change anything. And click build app. And this is just the easiest way I've found to get the app into the emulator. There are other ways to launch it and install it. But in terms of simplicity, running this again and letting it launch for you is by far a bit fewer steps. Oh no, it went to the wrong device. Okay, one more time. I forgot to disconnect my other device. There we go. Cordova will find your emulator if it's running. If you've got an emulator and a physical device connected, it may choose to favor one over the other. In my case, it just tried to run it on my connected mobile device again. But here we go. So there's our callback. Click our button. Callback succeeded. So this is a way you can still verify that you've done it right, and you don't need to have a device, a physical device available to you to do it. So that's how you can figure out your callback URL and verify that you've got it right. Once you've figured out that you have it right, you can come back in here, you know, create a new one, or, you know, change what the component is, publish do a live test of your app again, and then run the actual thing, and that should get you going and running. I do want to touch on plugins a little bit. So a question we often get is, how do I know what plugins my component uses? And while Alpha Anywhere tries very, very hard to answer that question for you, it's not perfect, and there are times where we don't actually know what plugin you want to use. So a good example of that is image capture with Alpha Anywhere, in that we have several plugins you can use to access the camera. One of them is Camera, which is up here at the top. But another one, which we include, is called Camera with EXIF. And Camera with EXIF is a plugin that, in addition to letting you access the camera and take pictures, it lets you access the EXIF information of those images. So that's not necessarily available in this camera plugin. So if you're using something like a list with image capture, we have let's add a list. And this is going to be a bit slow. I think it's related to how many things I'm running right now. Android Studio does require a lot of memory. So coming here, and we've got this con string, which you guys aren't going to have this table. This photo ID. If you've got a list that has some data in it, and one of those things is an image. So this, nope, photochar is. This is an image. And I think the showing the image capture is something that warrants a larger discussion. But when you're setting this up, I gotta put stuff in list layout. There we go. Oh, we're not going to preview this. I'm just trying to get to the point where I can do an action JavaScript. Set a button because that's going to be faster. Button. Okay, image. I do believe I also need to generate a detail view for this. So we'll come back into the list, go to list properties. We'll check has detail view. Come over to the has detail view tab. We'll say quick setup genie, create my controls for me. Sure, let's generate all that stuff. We'll select our list. We'll place it after and click OK. We'll let it wrap everything in a frame. We'll just put detail view on the frame. Return value has been set to primary key. That's great. Go ahead and close that. And now we're ready to rock. So we have a list, image capture for list detail view, camera photo library. And eventually we'll get to the end of my story that I'm telling here for you. It does have an image control. Oh, let's go here. This guy's an image. That's not a text box. This guy's an image. So list, image capture for detail view photo library. My image control is that photo character control. And phone gap preferred, Cordova data capture mode. In this database, it uses file name. But one of the options in this action is to store EXIF info. And in order to get that EXIF info, you have to be using the camera with EXIF plugin. If you're not going to store camera EXIF info, you don't need to use that one. You can just use camera. But as you're working through these actions, if you add on the, add these features, come in here and look at the definition. Here's where you set up where you store all of that if you want. There is also, where is it? There's a note somewhere that talks about what you need to do. And it might be in the JavaScript itself. And it's escaping me. But on occasion, when we have these features like this, there will be a note in the help area that says requires camera with EXIF, or there will be a note in some JavaScript that you're working with that says, hey, if you want to access these variables, this plugin needs to be added. And as you run into those, you want to take note of that. I'm not going to save this because you're going to want to come over to properties on the UX component itself, and you're going to scroll down here, and there's something in here. I think it's still, nope, it might be renamed. Let's find that property. Cordova default settings. Yes, all right. So this is where you're going to come. You're going to find this Cordova default settings property in advanced. And what this lets you do is you can come in here and say, this component requires the camera because I'm going to use it. And it also requires file and file transfer because I'm going to store these files up on the server and then download them locally, as well as take the images that I've captured locally and upload them to the server. So those three things are required for image capture. If I was using with EXIF information, I wouldn't need camera. I would need camera with EXIF. So I would come down here and I would pick camera with EXIF and I click OK. And so now this information is stored with the components. So when you go into the Cordova Builder and add this, the Cordova Builder looks at this information and says, aha, I need all these plugins, and adds it for you. No more guesswork, no more paperwork, keeping notes on a piece of paper. So as you work with things, you'll want to make sure that you're updating those default settings. Again, Alpha Neighbor will try, but we don't always know. And sometimes we don't assume because we need you to make that decision for us. So that was something I wanted to point out of how can you keep track of it. Definitely take advantage of the Cordova default settings.
Excellent.
So I'm going to take questions here in the last 5 minutes. There's so much more we can talk about, and we're gonna keep talking about it. We're gonna do a demo on doing image capture. We're gonna do one on IndexedDB when that becomes available. IndexedDB is coming down the line as a way to store data offline, which is going to open up the floodgates on web apps, because right now with a web app, you want to store data offline, you got local storage, and that's about it, and that's like 5 megabytes. IndexedDB is like, how big is your hard drive? We're looking at you're jumping from a few megabytes all the way up to a gigabyte, like baseline. So
that's a big game changer,
that's
especially
huge
for browser-based applications,
Definitely.
right?
It is.
Because if it is Cordova, you do have access to the file system if you wanted it, but
right.
Yeah, this is
but
cool.
not with a web app. You don't have access to the file system in a web application.
Great. So you had mentioned before that there's a way to keep that CLI Builder window open so that
Yes, I did.
when the messages go by.
All right, so let's go look at that.
All right.
So this is going to require you knowing where you put things. So definitely remember where you put stuff. Where you need to know where did you when you went through the CLI Builder here. And save and launch. This here, target project build folder. All the
Oh, okay.
files, including that build script, are in that folder. So you need to remember where that is.
So you could
So
copy that and paste that into Explorer if you wanted to, right?
no, it's going to be wherever you. This is on my system.
Yeah, but aren't you
Wherever you
looking at your
specified
system?
it, yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be for wherever you saved it. So I put mine in something called Android CLI, and then we did Ajax callback demo, and there's a CLI.bat folder in here. If you right click, there should be an option to open in Windows Terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And then here you can do // and CLI build.bat. And this is exactly what you see fly across the screen in Alpha Anywhere when you click the button. The big difference is that this just stays open. So if you have an error, you can copy that out of here. There's also other commands you can use to pipe the output into a file. I'm looking to add a how do I X article up on documentation that talks about this. But at a minimum, you can select this stuff and copy it out. It's a
Great.
bit weird. Terminal's a bit weird on Windows on copying text, but here we go, launch success. So I think
Maybe right click or Control A, Control C.
cancel.
Oh, it looks like you.
So I think I right clicked on it. So I selected everything and then I right clicked and let's see, I'm going to paste it over here just in case there's something on there. Yeah.
You know, that
All
works.
right. No, so yeah, so I selected all, it says Windows PowerShell up here. But cancel, I don't want to paste that. But here's that output. So if you've got a problem, you can come into that folder, you can open the terminal, you can run the CLI build.bat yourself, you can copy out all that output, you can save it as a text save as like a log or .text or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you can send that to us, but we need the whole log in order to assist you. If you send us a screenshot of part of it, there's not a whole lot to go on that screenshot often. We just don't know, just
You
looking
may
at
be
it,
missing
what may
things
have
that are
caused it.
scrolled above or below. Yeah.
Right, because what happens is what happens when in building software, compiling software, and this is just a general thing that happens when you build an application, is something called a cascading failure. So something goes wrong and it causes a whole bunch of other problems down the line because the system isn't smart enough to know what the original issue is. So you get like tons of errors when in fact it's just like one thing that went wrong. But without the whole log, you can't really know where that started. So that's why we asked for it. Yep. And we're more than happy to help you figure this out. Because sometimes the error might be that you're missing a plugin and you just didn't know that, which might be an opportunity for us to make the product better. But other times it's something has changed. These plugins are managed by somebody else on a lot of these things. And if something changes and we've pulled that latest plugin and we were not aware that this change has happened and it causes a problem, that we need to fix it and investigate it. So having that whole log really is very beneficial.
Excellent. Hey, Sarah, thank you very much for your presentation today. If people have any further questions, go ahead and send them to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. We look forward to seeing you at our next Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast, which will be hosted next week by our special guest, Dion McCormick. And until then, we hope you stay well and take care. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.